Tom and Jerry fans have had a rough time of the shorts being released on physical media. It's always been one thing after another, right? So we had the Spotlight collection coming out in the 2000s, which ended up missing two shorts, and one of the sets even duplicated another short. And those transfers were, for the most part anyway, a lot to be desired. But then there was some hope. We had the Tom and Jerry Golden Collection, which came out on Blu-ray, and we thought, okay, things will be on the up and up. Yeah, some of the transfers even on that set weren't the best, but still, they were coming out now in order, and things were looking on the up and up. We had the Volume 2 announced, and then they were going to remove two cartoons, and because of the backlash, the whole set was just cancelled. So it was kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So it is what it is. But unlike the Looney Tunes, where there were plenty of releases, bit of a hiatus due to Warner Brothers putting things on hold for the longest time, and then finally you had Porky Pig 101 and those other sets afterwards. It's been crickets when it comes to Tom and Jerry. You've just had some re-releases here and there, but definitely nothing substantial. New restorations did show up on the HBO Max, now Max streaming servers. Even those have been a little bit all over the place in terms of the quality, but that was still something new. But where's all the physical media releases for Tom and Jerry? People have been wondering. So you had Popeye, you had Tex Avery, now Looney Tunes and Warner Archive. You would think with Tom and Jerry, it's a bit of a no-brainer, right? It'd be pretty popular and sell pretty well. So in a bit of a surprising announcement, Warner Archive then announced this set, which is the Tom and Jerry Cinemascope collection, which is a choice I totally understand why they went for. First of all, you have enough shorts in that format to justify one release. So you have 23 Tom and Jerry shorts that were done in the format, plus 3 bonus shorts. And I'll go through all those shorts in just a moment. And some of you might be wondering, why aren't they just doing it again from the start? Maybe with upgraded transfers, maybe scanned in 4K and all that stuff, which is what they've been doing for the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice sets. Well, there are definitely some reasons behind that, I think, but what we'll do is we're going to first focus on what you're getting with this set and whether you should buy this set if you're a Tom and Jerry fan, and then I'll go through some things at the end regarding my thoughts on releases and that sort of thing. So what's on this set? Well, let's take a look. So those are the shorts that are on this set, and I'm not going to do an in-depth review on all these shorts, but generally speaking, these came out at the tail end of the Hanna-Barbera run, and these also came out roughly when Tex Avery left the studio because his unit was disbanded. They tried to put it back together, but by that point, Tex Avery was over at Walter Lantz studio. Also, Fred Quimby, the producer, he had gone as well, so now Hanna-Barbera were not only directing it, but also producing these shorts. And this was also during the period of time where cinema going was on the downturn and television was on the upswing. So they needed to do something to compete with television. And so what they've done is they've gone with a few different formats. One format that didn't go too far was 3D. Other studios attempted it. Warner Brothers did, Disney did, Lance did, and Famous Studios did as well. MGM opted for the Cinemascope process, which was like a widescreen process where these days widescreen is commonplace, it's everywhere, but this was the wider scope. So the selling point was, hey, if you're at home, you're looking at this tiny little box, maybe 22 or so inches, but if you come to the cinema or the theater, you got this massive screen and you can see something that you cannot see at home. These days, that selling point isn't as top-notch because you can make some really good home theater systems at home, right? But back then, you had either a small black and white TV or you can go to the cinema. And you can also see things in color too. That was another selling point because color TV didn't really become commonplace in the 60s in the United States. And even then, it was really expensive. It took a few years to really take off and have color TVs everywhere. Similar to how high definition adoption took a little bit longer, 4K adoption took a bit longer as well. So it's pretty much the same thing. Anytime you have a new technology, things will, of course, start slow and then build up as more people can afford it. But what you'll notice with these Cinemascope shorts is that they are a little bit more on the tamer side. I'm not saying they're bad, not at all. But you had the 40s Hanna-Barbera shorts up until roughly the early 50s, where there was kind of I don't want to say rivalry, but there seemed to be a bit of a competition happening. You had Tex Avery doing things really wild, and the shorts sort of complemented each other. That's how I feel anyway about it. But since Tex Avery left and Hanna-Barbera took over, I think their own sensibilities took over. Plus, you had budget cuts as well. And you can definitely tell Tom's design is being streamlined, backgrounds are more simplified, less full animation, so less lush animation. In fact, these shorts are a perfect way to see how Hanna-Barbera went for those really lush shorts in the 1940s up until their TV stuff in the late 1950s. But there's a lot of fun to be had here. Yes, there are some remakes. So they did some experiments where they actually took the soundtrack from some of the old 1940s shorts and they simply put new visuals and called it a day. I guess that's a new definition of a cheetah short, right? But audiences at the time wouldn't have known or cared. But you got some wonderful shorts here. I've always enjoyed the Three Musketeer style shorts. I always grew up with those. Robin Hoodwinked, that one I watched a ton as a kid on one of the 6 VHS tapes I had of Tom and Jerry. Of course, it was cropped, and so seeing it in the Cinemascope just blew my mind. Muscle Beach Tom, another favorite of mine that I always watched as a kid. But most of these are new to me. I mean, Pet Peeve is another great one. So there's definitely a lot of fun to be had. Just don't expect these to be the cream of the crop of what Barra were doing. Plus, I love the look of the backgrounds here, which is definitely different from what they were doing in the 40s. And again, this is something that they would then transition over to when they started their own studio and created all the wonderful TV animations, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, and that sort of thing. And of course, the Flintstones. What's interesting though is while they did the best they could with the sound, they were only able to find, I believe, 4 shorts with the original stereo track. So watching those shorts with the stereo track is definitely an experience because you're so used to this more tinny, one-channel sound coming from these older shorts, but then to hear it in this stereo in higher quality, granted, it's not going to match something that would be recorded today, but still, that closely replicates what you would have heard at the time if you watched this in the cinema back in the day. It's a shame they couldn't find it all, but the Cinemascope process, as far as I understand, there was a lot of deterioration issues. Plus, also, the MGM vaults, there was a fire in the 1960s, so some of the original elements would have been lost as well. So having these restorations at all is pretty much a miracle. They would have had to use other elements to patch all this together. And as for the bonus features, it's interesting that they've actually included 3 bonus Cinemascope shorts, and I think this is the perfect place to put them as far as I'm concerned. So you have Goodwill to Men, and that is also a remake, but that is a remake of Peace on Earth, which is a wonderful short that was done by MGM earlier on. But this one was updated to be a little bit more topical at the time regarding the Cold War, and some would argue it's even topical today. And you have the 2 lone Spike and Tyke shorts, which you can just tell that Hanna-Barbera were looking to maybe expand things further, but because MGM shut down the cartoon studio in the late 50s, they probably just didn't continue with it because, the writing was on the wall. So that's a perfect place to put them. What you're not going to get, because MGM actually did some more Cinemascope shorts, you just won't get the Droopies. And those Droopies, they're not Tex Avery Droopies, but they were done by the animator turned director Michael Lark. The quality of those, some like them, some don't, but they're not on there. So could they have put them on there? Maybe, but then the other files might suffer as a result because of more compression. So that's up for debate whether they should have added those in. Maybe they'll add them in the future if they do a dedicated Droopy set or something along those lines. But I think they should get those released on Blu-ray as well. So are you going to enjoy this set? Well, it depends. They're definitely better than the Chuck Jones ones. They're certainly better than the Gene Deitch ones, despite the fact I love how crazy some of those actually get. They're not as good as the 1940s ones, but there's still a lot of fun to be had on these sets. Now, I was mentioning before about why would they pick this and not start at the beginning. Wouldn't surprise me if they decide to do this set first to test the waters to prove the viability that, hey, they can sell Tom and Jerry via Warner Archive and turn a profit. And then down the track, you might be able to release the other stuff, and they should just put on a disclaimer, call it a day. I mean, even this set, and these are very safe shorts on this set, it says, it is intended for the adult collector and may not be suitable for children. So there is that. But regardless of your thoughts on these shorts, one thing is clear, the quality is outstanding. The sound is outstanding, especially for those shorts where they found the original stereo masters. You're getting 3 bonus shorts on top of it, so you're getting 26 shorts in this set. And if you can watch it on a massive television, so I've got a 75-inch TV, I watched it on that. Looks amazing. I highly recommend getting this set. I don't think these are anyone's favorite Tom and Jerry's, and I've seen that comment around quite a few times actually. But at the end of the day, this is, I think, a good start and a great start to the 85th anniversary celebration that's happening in the year 2025. But that will do it for this review. Let me know if you're going to pick up a copy of this, and I'll have a link below in the description to actually purchase it if you haven't already. And hopefully there'll be more Tom and Jerry reviews to come. So until next time, take care.